Hey guys, so I've returned to this unit. I had to order a new limit switch for it. The limit in question is the one that is below the blower, so in the supply side ductwork, and the terminals had actually just gotten really rusty on it, so it was no longer making a good contact. So I replaced the terminals, cleaned it up, but wanted to order a new one because they're probably going to rust pretty quickly again. The unit in question is a York package unit, and a lot of your rooftop units are going to have kind of a similar layout, and they're going to have basically the same 3 or 4 different switch types and locations. So I'm just going to kind of walk through at least the ones that this one has. Now, on your control board, there is sometimes instances where you have to reset something directly on the board, and usually it will give you some sort of code that describes what the issue was, why it shut down. For example, it might say that there was a high pressure fault on circuit 1 or 2. This unit has 2 different compressors in it, and each compressor is going to have 2 limits. Well, 3 if you count the thermal limit that's actually built into the compressor, but that one's kind of more specific to if there's some sort of start error. But I'll show you where the high pressure and low pressure switches are on here. So the smaller line coming off is the high side pressure, where the superheated gas comes, and right there is one of those limits, just a brazed in pressure switch. And sometimes it tells you the pressures that they open and close at. 625 perhaps, that's pretty high. And then this other one here is the low pressure switch. So that's on the low pressure side, and if the system gets too low, then this one will open and it'll shut off the compressor. If the system gets too high pressure, this one will open, and they have a set amount that the pressure has to drop before they'll kick back on. These ones are supposed to automatically reset, so you don't actually ever have to get in there and do any kind of resets on them. Moving on with the blower compartment here, you can see there's the big blower, and sometimes it's on the right or the left, but somewhere in this cabinet, in this case they actually put it nice front and center, which is great, is a manual reset limit. So if this gets too hot, this is going to open up, and you'll have to manually come and press this little button. It'll click, and that will restore the 24 volts through the limit switch and get the system going again. So if you see that this is tripped, you need to check your belts, check your filters, make sure you've got proper airflow through it, because it usually means it got too hot there and ended up tripping. So you don't want to just manually reset it without figuring out why it tripped. The next common type of limit switch is down in here. So this one is considered a rollout switch. You can see it's mounted right above the gas burners, and these can be mounted a few different spots. Sometimes there's 2 of them in series on the bottom, or sometimes they're on the top. They can be kind of anywhere, just somewhere where they're going to be reading the burner flame. So if for some reason, like if this blower quits, there's going to be flame rolling back into this compartment, which is why it's called a flame rollout, because the flame is going to roll over this edge. It's going to heat this really hot, and that's going to trip. And that one is also a manual reset, so you'd have to come and click, snap that in. Of course, once you do reset it, you need to figure out why did it trip. Is it an issue with the combustion blower? Is there some debris stuck in the outlet? Did you have a really severe wind causing back pressure? There can be a number of things that will cause that to trip. And then this last switch, which is the one that I said I put some new wires to, is the one that I'm going to be replacing in this instance. So I'll show you here. It will tell us switch limit auto reset 195 165 open close. So that opens at 195 degrees, and then once it has cooled down to 165, it will close again. And that's what that switch looks like. It's got 2 soldered prongs that are insulated with this fiberglass jacketing, and this is just 24 volts going through there. This looks a little askew, like it got bent a tiny bit. It does happen occasionally where these will trip, like say you have a plugged air filter or the belt came off the blower and it got too hot right inside here. And if this is open and cooled down, that means the little thermal disc in there got stuck. and you're stuck then replacing it. Sometimes you can tap on it to get it to reset again, but you only want to rely on it until you can get a new switch installed. So they're just two 5/16 screws. I'm just going to pull them out, and then I'll slide this in where it goes, put those two new screws in, and then we should be good to go. When this thing was basically tripped, it thought that switch was tripped because of the corroded wire ends. See how they're really rusted? So it thought it was tripped even though it actually wasn't. It was giving us a code 4 for limit switch open. So then I had to go around and check. You can check these by checking for 24 volts on one side and then measuring it on the other side. If you've got 24 on either side, then you're good, and 0 across, you're good. Or you can pull the wires off and put your meter into continuity and test for continuity across the switch. And that is the same for all of the switches in this unit. With the 4 blinking on this control board status LED, the blower was also running continuously, because when there's an open limit from a flame rollout or from like a high temperature in the ductwork, it runs the blowers to try to cool everything down. Most of the time that's all they're going to have, but it can vary unit to unit. Sometimes they have 2 in the blower compartment, one at the far side, one at the close side. And the ones in the blower compartment, one is a manual reset usually and one is an automatic. So looking at the actual switch here, you can see it says L195 minus 30 as opposed to what our package said with the 165. But that just means the same thing as before. L195 is the open, and then once it cools 30 degrees to that 165, it is going to close again. So there's a few different ways that they can mark them. Kind of nice actually to have an example talking about the same switch, but listed 2 different ways. You do want to do this with the unit off, because when you go to actually pull the switch out, it can short out against the frame, since it has those long, basically combination wire and support structure. Get it out away from the insulation. Come on, there it is. So if you accidentally touch the frame of the unit with any of this metal, because this metal is the support structure and the wire, both. Slide it in there. Of course, make sure that the one you're replacing is actually the same reading, L195 minus 30. See, that was the main problem. These are really rusty. I just cleaned them up with some steel wool, or emery paper actually, to get it going again. So technically this switch probably still okay, but this nice new coating on there will prevent that from happening again, hopefully. Anyway, I hope that you found this video helpful, and I'll talk to you guys later.